Right now, somewhere in Japan, someone is finishing dinner, and instead of reaching for their phone or turning on the television or scrolling through anything at all, they're doing something that might look almost strange to modern eyes. Nothing. Not meditative, capital N nothing. Just quietly boiling water, watching steam rise, sitting still, in silence, for a few unremarkable minutes before bed. If you ask them what they're doing, they probably wouldn't call it a wellness practice, or a mindfulness routine, or anything with a name at all. It's simply how the evening ends. It's ordinary, and that, it turns out, might be exactly why it works. Because here's a question worth sitting with. What if the constant stimulation that defines modern evenings, the scrolling, the shows, the notifications, the bright screens, pulling your attention until the moment you finally, exhaustedly fall asleep, isn't actually helping you unwind at all? What if it's quietly preventing the one thing your overstimulated mind actually needs to recover? Today, we're looking at a simple, centuries-old Japanese evening ritual, and the specific science behind why it might be exactly what an overstimulated modern brain has been missing. Let's start by naming the problem clearly, because most of us have never actually stopped to define what overstimulation means, even though nearly everyone experiences it. Overstimulation, in a psychological sense, occurs when the amount of sensory and cognitive input your brain is processing exceeds what it can comfortably handle. This isn't just about loud noises or bright lights, though those certainly contribute. In the modern world, overstimulation is most commonly driven by something subtler: the sheer volume of rapidly shifting, attention-demanding information most of us are exposed to in a single evening. A video autoplays into another video. A notification interrupts a text conversation. A show plays in the background, while a phone is scrolled in the foreground. Each of these, individually, seems harmless. Together, across hours, they add up to something your nervous system was never designed to process continuously. Here's something genuinely important to understand. The human nervous system evolved in environments where stimulation was naturally bounded by daylight, physical proximity, and the limits of face-to-face interaction. Evening, for nearly all of human history, meant a dramatic and unavoidable reduction in sensory input. Darkness fell, activity slowed, firelight replaced daylight, voices grew quieter. This wasn't a wellness choice anyone made deliberately. It was simply the physical reality of a world without artificial light, screens, or constant connectivity. And this dramatic evening reduction in stimulation wasn't incidental. It played, and still plays, a crucial biological role. Let's bring in the science here, because this connects directly to how sleep actually works. Your circadian rhythm, the internal biological clock that regulates sleep and wakefulness, relies heavily on environmental cues, particularly light and sensory stimulation. To determine when your body should begin producing melatonin, the hormone responsible for feeling sleepy. Bright light, especially the blue wavelength light emitted by most screens, actively suppresses melatonin production. But it's not only light that interferes with this process. Cognitive stimulation itself, the mental effort of processing fast-moving content, making micro-decisions about what to watch or read next, responding to social triggers, keeps your brain in an alert, engaged state that directly conflicts with the physiological shift your body needs to make in order to properly wind down. This is precisely the gap that traditional Japanese evening practices, developed centuries before anyone understood circadian biology, seem to intuitively address. Let's look at the ritual itself now, and then we'll return to why it works so effectively. In many traditional Japanese households, evenings historically included a practice that still persists in some form today. A slow, quiet, single-focus activity performed in near silence before bed. The most common example is the preparation and drinking of a simple cup of hot tea. Not the elaborate ceremonial tea ceremony most people picture when they think of Japanese tea culture, but something far more ordinary and accessible. Boiling water, warming a cup, pouring slowly, and sitting with it in quiet stillness for a few minutes before sleep. What makes this ritual worth examining isn't the tea itself, it's the structure of the activity. And specifically, 4 qualities it consistently contains. It's slow, it's singular, it's sensory in a narrow, contained way, and it's performed without any competing input. Let's break down why each of these 4 qualities matters, because together, they form something close to an antidote to modern overstimulation. First, Slowness. Boiling water for tea takes several minutes, and there's no way to meaningfully speed up that process. This built-in slowness stands in direct contrast to nearly everything else in a typical modern evening, where content is designed to move as quickly as possible. Cutting from scene to scene, notification to notification, without any natural pause. Psychologists who study attention have found that constant rapid task switching, sometimes measured through what's called attention residue, leaves a lingering cognitive cost each time your focus shifts. Slow, single-task activities like tea preparation offer something screens rarely do, an activity with no possible next thing to switch to, because the activity itself simply takes the time it takes. Second, singularity. Making tea involves one clear sequence of actions: filling the kettle, waiting, pouring, holding the cup, drinking. There's no multitasking built into it. This matters because multitasking, which most evening screen time actually is, watching a show while scrolling a phone, for example, has been consistently linked in cognitive research to increased mental fatigue and reduced ability to relax, even when the individual tasks themselves feel passive or entertaining. A single focus activity gives your brain something increasingly rare in modern life: one thing to attend to, and only one thing. Third, narrow sensory engagement. The experience of making and drinking tea involves a small, contained set of sensory inputs. The sound of water heating, the warmth of the cup in your hands, the aroma rising as it steeps, the taste itself. This is meaningfully different from the sensory experience of a screen, which typically combines rapid visual movement, sound, sometimes multiple layers of audio and text simultaneously, and often emotionally charged content, whether that's a dramatic show or an engagement-optimized social media feed. Narrow, gentle sensory input allows your nervous system to process a small, manageable amount of information, rather than continuously filtering through an overwhelming stream of it. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, the absence of competing input. This is the quality most conspicuously missing from modern evening routines. When you watch television, you're often also holding a phone. When you scroll social media, notifications interrupt from other apps. Nearly every modern evening activity is layered, with something running in the background while something else runs in the foreground. The traditional tea ritual, by contrast, asks for nothing else to be happening. No show playing quietly in another room, no phone within reach. Just the water, the cup, and a few minutes of undivided presence. There's a Japanese phrase that captures the underlying value here beautifully: ichinichi no owari, roughly meaning the end of the day, but used in a way that implies something more deliberate than simply the clock reaching a certain hour. It refers to a conscious closing, a marked transition, rather than a day that simply trails off into unconsciousness through exhaustion. This connects to something we've discussed before: the concept of ma, intentional pause and space. An evening without any ma, without any deliberate, unstimulated pause before sleep, doesn't truly end. It simply stops, abruptly. When exhaustion finally overrides the stimulation keeping you awake, this is a very different experience, physiologically and psychologically, from a day that closes gently, on its own terms. Let's talk about what happens biologically during those few quiet minutes, because the effects are more concrete than they might first appear. Research on stress physiology has consistently shown that periods of low sensory input, particularly in the evening, are associated with measurable decreases in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. This isn't simply about feeling calmer subjectively, though that matters too. Elevated evening cortisol has been linked in sleep research to difficulty falling asleep, reduced sleep quality, and even shortened deep sleep phases, which are essential for physical recovery and memory consolidation. In other words, an overstimulated evening doesn't just feel unpleasant in the moment. It has measurable downstream effects on the quality of the sleep that follows it. There's also a specific psychological mechanism worth mentioning here, what researchers sometimes call attentional restoration. This concept, developed within environmental psychology, suggests that certain types of gentle, undemanding sensory engagement, often referred to as soft fascination, allow depleted attention resources to recover in a way that both intense focus and passive stimulation, like most screen content, do not. Watching steam rise from a cup, listening to water gently boiling, feeling warmth spread through your hands. These are precisely the kinds of soft, low-demand sensory experiences that attentional restoration research associates with genuine cognitive recovery rather than mere distraction. This is worth pausing on because it reveals something important about the difference between rest and distraction, which are very easy to confuse in modern life. Scrolling a phone before bed often feels, in the moment, like relaxation. But if it involves rapid content switching, emotionally engaging material, and bright light exposure, it isn't actually restorative in the way genuine rest requires. It's simply a different, more passive form of stimulation. The traditional tea ritual, by contrast, offers something screens structurally cannot: an activity so simple, so slow, and so free of competing input that your nervous system is finally given room to downshift. Now, let's bring this back to something practical, because appreciating the science behind this ritual is only useful if it changes how you actually spend your evenings. You don't need to adopt tea specifically or any particular Japanese custom exactly as practiced to benefit from the underlying principle here. What matters is recreating the 4 qualities we discussed: slowness, singularity, narrow sensory engagement, and the absence of competing input. This could be a cup of tea, as in the traditional practice. It could just as easily be washing a few dishes by hand instead of leaving them for the morning, folding a small stack of laundry with your full attention, or simply sitting quietly with a warm drink for 10 minutes without any screen nearby. What matters far more than the specific activity is the structure around it. Choose something slow, something that cannot be rushed without losing its point. Choose something singular, one task, not several layered together. Choose something with narrow sensory input, quiet, simple, unhurried. And critically, remove every competing source of stimulation while you do it. No phone within reach, no show playing in the background, no second screen, no notifications, no multitasking of any kind. It's worth being honest that this will likely feel uncomfortable at first, particularly if your evenings have been filled with near constant stimulation for a long time. Boredom, restlessness, and even a mild anxious urge to check your phone are common initial reactions to genuinely unstimulated time. Precisely because your nervous system has become accustomed to a baseline level of input it now expects. This discomfort isn't a sign that the practice isn't working. It's often a sign that it's beginning to. There's a final, important nuance worth mentioning before we close. This isn't a call to eliminate all evening entertainment, connection, or enjoyment from your life. Watching a show you love, texting a friend, unwinding with something genuinely pleasurable, these remain valuable, valid parts of a good evening. The point isn't that stimulation is inherently bad. The point is that an evening entirely filled with stimulation, with no quiet, unstimulated closing ritual at all, leaves your nervous system with no clear signal that the day has actually ended. A single quiet, deliberate pause, even just 10 minutes, can provide exactly that signal, regardless of what the rest of your evening looked like. So, if you've been feeling overstimulated, exhausted in a way that more scrolling never quite seems to fix, this ancient, unremarkable ritual might be worth trying tonight. Not because tea itself is magic, but because a few minutes of genuine, undivided, unhurried quiet at the close of an otherwise stimulating day might be exactly what your mind has been missing. Maybe your evenings don't need more content to feel restful. Maybe they need one small pocket of quiet, undivided attention, a deliberate close to the day, rather than an exhausted collapse into it. What would it look like for you to end tonight with 10 minutes of slow, single-focus quiet? No phone, no screen, just one simple thing done fully? If this gave you a small, practical shift worth trying tonight, A-Like helps this reach more people looking for that same sense of calm. And if you'd enjoy more grounded explorations like this one, subscribing means the next video finds you when you need it. Feel free to share this with someone whose evenings could use a little more quiet.